Hello Divination and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a two-sided sidebar blog post template with Divi. This is the result we're aiming to achieve. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started. All right, so the very first thing we need to do here is to head over to the theme builder because this is where we're going to create our template for all our blog posts. So I'm going to come over here all the way down to Divi and then hover over Divi and then click on theme builder. Now, once the builder loads, what we need to do is to add a new template. So I'm going to click here on this plus button and the template needs to be applied to all the posts. So I'm going to come over here and select all posts and create template. So now you can see our template here is blank and it says here all posts, and this is the most important part. So now that we have our all posts selected, the next step now is to start building this template body. So I'm going to click here on add custom body and then we're going to click on build custom body. So this now is going to take us into the builder. We're going to click on start building. And the first thing we're going to do here is to add a background color to our section. So I'm going to click here on section settings, click on background and add our background color by clicking here on this plus button. And I'm just going to paste my value in here. Okay, so that's going to be our background color. Okay, so by the way, if you want to use the exact same colors as I'm using throughout this tutorial, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. All right, so now that we have this set, the next step here is to go to design spacing because we need to give a padding of 50 pixels both to the top and the bottom. And while we're here, we all might as well add our sizes for the tablets and the smartphones. So I'm going to click on this little icon here. Click on tablet, and here on tablet, we're going to set this to 20 pixels. And no, in fact, you know what? I'm still on the desktop. So the desktop needs to be 50. And then over here on the tablet, this needs to be 20. And then on the phone, this needs to be 10. It's always a good idea to go in and add these sizes on all these different screen sizes. So now that we're done here, we're going to save, and then we're going to come over here and click on this plus button and add our column structure. And the column structure we're going to go with is this one right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. Now, before we add any modules, we just want to go in and make some customizations. So I'm just going to close this pop-up here, click on my row settings. And the first thing we need to do is to head over here to design sizing, and for activate custom gutter width, and I'm going to set this to 2. And for our width here, we need to set this to 100%. And for our maximum width, we're going to set this to 95%. Next, we're going to scroll down here to spacing, and we are going to add a padding of 0 both to the top and the bottom. So I'm going to activate this change so the value can be added both to the top and the bottom, but of course you can also add it manually. Right, so now that we are done with that, the next step now is to go to column 2 and add our background color. So I'm just going to go back over here to content, click on column 2, which is the middle one. So I'm going to click on this little gear icon, click on background, and we're going to give this a background color of white. So click here on this plus button and add my color. Next, we're going to add a box shadow. So we are going to come over here to design, box shadow, and we're going to go with this design here. Right, so now that we have this selected, the next step now is to add all our values. So first of all, we're going to look for our box shadow blur strength. So box shadow blur strength, we're going to set this to 80, and we're also going to go to our box shadow spread strength, and here we're going to set it to -21. And then finally, we're going to add our shadow color, and as I mentioned, if you want to use the exact same colors, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. So here we're going to click on the eyedropper tool and just paste the value between the brackets like that. And then we're going to save. So we're going to save one more time. And now it's time to add our modules. So I'm going to come over here to module 2. So I'm going to click on this plus button and add my image. I'm going to select it. So on the image settings, we're going to come over here to design sizing, and here on sizing we are going to activate force full width, so set that to yes. Now this image here that we have needs to be a featured image, otherwise if you just add it as a normal image, we just need to add that image manually. So we want this to dynamically get updated as our website is working. Okay, so to set this as a featured image, I'm just gonna in fact we need to close this, so we need to delete this and then click on these 3 little discs here and set our featured image. So every time we add a featured image to our post, this is the image that's going to load up, and make sure that it says featured image over here. Otherwise, it's not going to work. All right. So now that we've set all this up, I'm going to save this. And the next step now is to add another module. And this time it's a post title module to column 2. So I'm going to click here on this plus button, and I'm going to search for my post title. Okay, so as you can see here, it has a featured image as well. So the first thing we need to do is to go in and remove that featured image by coming over here to elements and scrolling all the way down here to featured image and then saying no. So now you can see all we have is the title and the meta text. Okay, so now we need to customize this text by coming over here to design. So let's start here with our title font, and I'm going to hover over here and click on this paintbrush icon. So over here on the title font, we need to use a font called Oxygen. So I'm going to search for it over here. And by the way, it's free. So I'm going to select it. And for size, we're going to set it to 2VW. And then for our line height, I'm going to set this to 1.2. Okay, so let's move on and choose our meta text. So I'm going to come over here. And as you can see here, it's set to default. So we want to change this to Open Sans. And again, I'm going to search for it. And here we go. I'm going to select it. And then for our color, I'm going to click here on the color picker and paste my color in here. And then for the size, it's going to be 1VW. Now, as you can see, everything is way too close to the borders here. So we need to adjust that by coming over here to spacing. And the first thing we need to do is to add a top margin of 100 pixels. So I'm just going to manually add it here. And then for our left and right margin, we're going to set this to 4VW. And since this is the same value, I'm going to activate my chain so it can be applied to both sides. So the next step now is to add a bit of CSS code here to custom CSS. And we want to target the title. And this is the CSS code we're going to add. So this just gives us a margin of 20 to the bottom for this title over here. And by the way, this CSS code can be found in the post, which I'll link to in the show notes below. So pretty much that's all we need to do for now. I'm going to save this. All right. So the next step now is to add our post content module to column 2. So I'm going to click here on this plus button and search for my post content. Okay. So here it is. I'm going to select it. So now let's go into our settings here and make some customizations to our text font. So I'm going to come over here to design and then go to text, and our text here needs to be set to Open Sans. So I'm going to go ahead and select it here because we've used this before. There we go. So we got Open Sans, and then we need to set our text size to 0.9 VW. And for our line height, I'm going to set this to 2.2. Now it's time to work on the headings. So I'm going to come over here. In fact, I'm going to scroll down here and go to my headings text. And here we're going to set font to Oxygen. And by the way, we used this already, so it's going to be here easy to find. And for my H2, I'm going to set this to 1.5 VW. And again, I'm just going to set this to Oxygen. Okay, so the size here is going to be 1.5 VW. Now, what you can also do here is to go ahead and add H3, 4, 5, and 6 and set the size to 1.3. So let me just do this one more time for you so you can see how easy it is. So I'm going to come over here to H3, click here on default font and set it to Oxygen. And then over here on the size, we're just going to set it to 1.3 and it needs to be VW. Next, we're going to work on the margins. So we're going to come over here to spacing. And here we're going to set left margin to 4 VW, both to the left and the right. So I'm going to activate my chain. And we also need to add a top padding of 50 pixels. And this time on the bottom, it's going to be 100 pixels. So now the next step is to add a CSS class. And this CSS class is going to add some spacing to the titles and the paragraphs. So I'm going to come over here to advanced and then click on CSS ID and classes. And for the class, we're going to set the class to post content spacing. Now, once we've set the class to that, we're going to now add a code module to this column 2. Okay. So the content that needs to go in the code module is going to be in the post, which I'll link to in the show notes below. Right. So I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to add my code module by clicking here on this plus button. And let's see. Oh, here it is. I'm going to select it. And I'm just going to add my code in here by just pasting it. So now you can see everything has been styled and everything has been spaced out properly. Okay, so this is looking good. Now I'm going to save, and this time we're going to add an email opt-in to column 3, which is over here. So I'm going to click here on this plus button and search for email opt-in and select it. Okay, so pretty much that's what it looks like by default. So you can add, whatever you want over here on the copy. So when it comes to the copy, you can add whatever you need over here. So I'm just going to use some dummy text here. And in this area here, on the body area, we can just delete all this because we don't really need any of this over here. Now, for this to work correctly, you need to set up your emails. So over here on email accounts, you should have either MailChimp, and plus there's a lot to choose from over here. You can see we have Aweber, ConvertKit, Emma, and so on. So just choose your email autoresponder, and then once you click here on add, it's going to ask you to add your API keys. And once you add your account name and API key, so let's say my account name is Mac. Now, I don't have my API key, but this is where you would add your API key. Once you hit submit, pretty much when someone signs up on this opt-in, they are going to be added onto that mailing list. Okay. All right. So moving on, we just need to do a bit of stylizing to this. And before we do that, we need to come over here to fields and remove show last name, because we don't really need the last name on there. Okay. So now that we've removed the last name, now let's stylize this and start adding our colors. So let's start here with the background color, which we're going to add and just replace what we have right now. So I'm going to use that. But of course, in your case, you can use whatever color that you want that works well with your color palette. All right. So now that we have this all set, now it's time to go into the field settings by coming over here to design. I'm going to go to field. So the first thing we need to do here is to choose the field font. So I'm going to come all the way down here and choose Open Sans. So I'm going to select it. And then the field's text size also needs to be added here. So I'm going to come over here and add it. Now it's time to go to our title text settings. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. So here we need to set this to oxygen. So I'm going to click on the drop down and choose oxygen. Now for our font weight, we're going to set this to bold. And we're also going to give this a size, which is going to be 1VW, and also a line height of 1.5. Right, so with all this added now, this is looking pretty good. The next step now is to go to our button settings and stylize our button, because as you can see, this is pretty generic. So to do that, we are going to look for our button here, and here it is. I'm going to click on it and then activate use custom styles for button. So here we're going to set our size. So for our button text size, it's going to be 0.9 VW. So I'm just going to add it here. There we go. And then for our button text color, I'm going to go in and add my color here, paste it in place. And then for my button background color, I'm going to scroll down further, click on this plus button here and paste my color in here. So moving on, our button border width, we are going to set this to 0. So just drag the slider all the way down. And then for our button border radius, at the moment, by default, it's set to 3. Let's bring it all the way down here to 0 so we can have a perfect square. Now let's add our button font. So we're going to set this to oxygen just to make sure that we are consistent with all our settings. So now that it's set to oxygen, the next step now is to just give our button some breathing space. So to do that, we need to scroll all the way down here and go to our top and bottom padding. And we're going to set this to 15 pixels. And since I'm applying this both to the top and the bottom, I'm going to click on this chain to activate the size both for the top and the bottom. Okay, so that's looking great. The next step now is to head over to box shadow. So I'm going to scroll all the way down here and choose my shadow. So the shadow I'm going to go with is the very first one here. And for my blur strength, I'm going to set this to 80 pixels. And also for my spread strength, set this to -21. And then finally, I need to go in and add my shadow color. And as I mentioned before, if you want to use the exact same color as I'm using throughout this tutorial, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. So I'm just going to paste now the values between the brackets like that. And pretty much that's our color for our shadow for our button. Okay, so now that we have this, we also need to add some social media follow. So let's go ahead and save this. And then on this third column, click on this plus button and add our social media follow. So I'm just going to search for my module here and select it. So as you can see here, it comes with these two by default. So you can always just duplicate this and then click on it on the gear icon and then choose whatever network it is you want to choose. So let's say this is YouTube. So go ahead and choose that and then click on back. And you can see here it is updated automatically on the right there, just below my email opt-in. All right. So now that we have those all set, well, what we're going to do now is to reset these styles. So I'm just going to right click, reset item styles. So what this does is it removes that background color. So all I'm doing is reset item styles. Great. So now that I've done that to all of them, the next step now is to add our icon color, which I'm going to do by coming over here to the design tab, icon, and I'm going to add my icon color here. So you can see here, those icons are now consistent with my colors on my website. All right. So pretty much that's all I need to do here. And also don't forget to go in here and add your URLs to your social media platforms. Okay. So this is where you need to add it and you need to do it for all of them. All right. So now that we've added all that, the next step now is to come over here and we are going to add a blog module to column 1. So I'm going to search for my blog module selected. Okay. So now that we have this selected, there's a few things that we need to do here. We need to disable a few things and activate a few things as well. Let's head over to elements. So this is where we can disable and activate stuff that we need. So show featured image is good. Let's leave it on. Show author. Let's get rid of that. So now that we've adjusted a little bit of the information here, let's head over to design, layout. And as you can see, it's set to full width. Ideally, we want this set to grid because this displays much better for the design that we're working on. Now let's work on our title font. So I'm going to come over here to title text, change this to Oxygen. We're going to make our font here bold and our size is going to be 1 VW and our line height is going to be 1.5. So you can see here that everything is now taking shape as I'm making these further customizations. Now let's go to the body text, and for the body text here, we also need to make sure that we're consistent. So I'm just going to scroll here to, in fact, I can just mouse over here and this will take me directly to my body text. So we're going to set this to Open Sans, and we know we've used this before, so I'm going to select it. And then the next step here is to set our text size. So I'm going to go ahead and add my text size here. And for our line height, it's going to be 2.2. Now let's make some adjustments to our meta text. So I'm going to come over here as well and just click on this brush tool, and that will take me to my options for my meta text. Okay, so here we're going to set our font size to Open Sans. And we're also going to set our color here by clicking on this color picker and pasting our color like that. And the size here needs to be adjusted as well, because as you can see, it looks quite big. So we're going to come over here and set this to 0.8 VW. All right. So now that we have that all set, now here you can also make it bold if you wanted to. I think it looks better when it's bold. Yes, definitely. Okay, so let's set that to bold, and we can also go ahead and add a border, or if you wanted to, we can just leave it as it is. But let's see what it looks like when we remove the border. So I'm going to come over here to border, and as you can see, it's set to 1 pixel. So if I move it, I think that's actually much better. So we're going to remove the border here and just set it to 0 pixels. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a shadow. So we're going to come over here to box shadow. We're going to choose our shadow. And then we're going to add our blur strength. So on the blur strength here, we're going to set this to 80. And we're also going to add our box shadow spread strength. And this is going to be -21. And then finally, we need to add our shadow color. So for our shadow color, we're just going to scroll down further here and click on the eyedropper tool. And I'm going to paste the values between the brackets like that. Okay, so that's pretty much looking great. So let's say you want to have specific views for different screen sizes. So this could be maybe the view for, say, desktops. You can also go in and rearrange things and set different views for, say, tablets and mobile phones. But pretty much this is how you set everything up. So let's save this and see what this looks like. So I'm going to hit Control S to save. We're going to close out of this. And I'm just going to save one more time over here. just to make sure. Now, what I've done ahead of time is I've added some posts. So I'm going to come over here to all posts so you can see what I have here. So pretty much I have hello world, and I also created another one called lorem ipsum. So now if I go to any one of these, so let's say I go to lorem ipsum and take a look, you'll notice that the template has been applied now pretty much to all my blog posts, and this is how it looks. Okay, so even if I go to hello world, and this is a totally separate post, you can see here that hello world has its own text image, and the layout is consistent. And over here we get the next post that we have available on our website. So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so, you'll be notified every time we release new tutorials. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments box below and I'll do our best to respond to them. Until next time, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.